And in closing, aerial reconnaissance has just confirmed that elements from Task Force 38 managed to sink both the Haruna and the Issei during their attack on the docks at Curie. Oh, sir, before we wrap up, you asked me to keep you briefed on anything unorthodox I came across in the weekly bulletins. Like that incident up at Bald Head Island back in March. Well, we have had something weird happen out in the Pacific. You'll be aware that as we've pushed the Japs further and further back, they've redeployed the bulk of their resources to defend the mainland. It's regrettable, but there have been incidents where some of our forces sit back from the front line have become somewhat complacent and paid for it. A couple of enemy soldiers they'd missed on an occupied territory coming out of hiding. Lone Japanese submarine operating on its own. It's possible this might be the case for one of our Loran stations. Earlier this week, a resupply flight touched down there and, well, station crew are missing, and we still can't figure out what the hell's happened to them. The station in question was one of our newer ones, operating off a remote island. Not a great deal there, in truth. Just the airstrip, a couple of huts, main antenna itself. Since it started up, it usually operated with a crew of 15. A lieutenant, some technicians, a couple of corpsmen. But this station whistled up a couple of weeks ago, called a medical emergency. Turned out they'd managed to food poison half their staff. We're not entirely sure how. Anyway, some of it is we put an emergency flight into them. Ended up evacuating 8 of the men, leaving the rest to manage on their own till we could find replacements. Took another week to do that. Then on Monday, the flight carrying the replacements lands back at the island. And well, there's nobody there to greet them. The relief crew whistled it right away, state they'd found the station insecure, all the staff missing. No obvious sign anybody had come to harm. No blood, no battle damage. Nothing obvious hadn't been taken. We got an investigation team down there quick as we could. Well, they ain't managed to find out much more than that. Logbooks had been filled in about 2 days after the medical flight left, and then they stopped, late into one evening. Remains of the meal for that night still present, mostly eaten, not cleaned away. All the equipment still up and running how it's supposed to. Charts, code books, logs, all there. But the people running it, nowhere. Only things the investigators did note were what looked like drag trails on the ground, leading up to the beach. No boot prints, just like something had been dragged through the sand there, scuffed it, for a protracted period of time. Hard to say if that was up the beach or back down it, or both. No sign of any boot marks, though, which is odd, to say the least. Inside the buildings, some of the corridors, they did find some scuff marks on the walls, on the floors. Can't tell if these are old or new, because they were uniform in each of the buildings. Odd thing was, they did find some traces of residue to accompany these marks. Well, residue, the word the investigators used was slime. I know I don't really understand it either, but like whatever had made contact with the surface there left a slimy trace behind. And a significant bit of it as well. Some of it was old, dried, some still wet to the touch. They've recovered some. We don't know yet if we can get it analyzed somewhere, but we'll try. There's no sign any rounds were discharged from any of the missing men's sidearms, so it doesn't seem like there was a fight. There's also no radio traffic, so whatever took place was quick. We've discounted a weather event from talking to the meteorological staff, and there's no odd radar traffic we're aware of around that time, which leads us to speculate that all 8 men somehow left the island during one narrow time frame, either of their own accord, because they felt they had no option, or because someone took them and they had no chance to resist. It's possible, I guess, we're looking at a Jap submarine arriving there. Either one of the small ones, like we saw here, Pearl, or a big one, like those incidents up in North Carolina. But this doesn't feel like Jap work. We know how they operate. Messy, making an example. And they'd either destroyed the transmitter or stolen the papers that had been left behind, I guess. I did take the liberty of reaching out to that unit in England I told you about. The one they deny exists, only deals with the stuff that other people won't touch. Guy who runs it, Shepard, he's not much of a people person, but he's straight down the line. Turns out the Brits have had ongoing issues with a foreign power they can't identify. Strange fellas in diving suits, using some kind of magnetic technology. Germans had some dealings with them too. There was some big incident during Overlord. It was all hushed up. Could be that's what we're faced with here. Folk with a different agenda, resources we can't assess, making an attack. When I gave him the circumstances, Shepard, he didn't seem to think it matched. I have asked him for a brief on these divers, and he said he'd talk to his bosses first, but in truth, I don't think he'll come through with it. There is, damn, I feel a fool for mentioning it. There is one other thing. You remember that scientist we brought in after North Carolina, Svensson? He's the fellow that wrote the report on those foot impressions they took and the skin samples from inside the swamp. But I put a call into him just to see if there was anything he could think of, anything that might match. He came back to me this morning with the weirdest answer. You ever heard of a hagfish? A hagfish? No, I hadn't either. Essentially, it's like a snake, but like if a snake and a gator got together and had kids. They got themselves this mouthful of razor sharp teeth, burrow into their prey and eat it from the inside out. But they leave slime behind when they get worked up, when they get animated. Longest one anyone's ever found was 2-3 feet, and they're usually deep water dwellers. So if we were looking at something like that coming up on land and engaging 8 sailors, that thing would have to be huge. Like nothing anybody's ever seen before huge. I've asked the brass if Svensson can get kept in the loop, reference the slime we recovered, and they said yeah, so that's something, I guess. No, sir, we're not sharing this outside the Navy at this point, and there's no plans to change the setup at the Loran stations. We've altered the radio check-ins to make them more regular, and we're trying to pull together a fast response team. Get out if this happens again. Badging it up as an anti-Jap rapid response team, rather than anything more sinister. Certainly, I'll let you know how it plays out in relation to this or anything else we can't fathom.